What's going on, everyone? You are now tuned into a special and personal episode of The Laundromat Show, hosted by myself, Kay Rose, and my friends Aunt McKee and Lee Garner. This episode will be dedicated to my late childhood friend Ty Sawyer, who died tragically after a fight 5 years ago. Controversially, his offender still has never been arrested, and no charges were ever filed against him for his actions. Justice for Ty is a phrase that arose in the aftermath of Ty's passing, which included several marches, petitions, and social media outrage. Ty's mother, Lisa Sawyer, was kind enough to speak with me this episode about her son and his situation. I want to first shout out Miss Lisa and all of Ty's family, the Cantwell crew, and everyone else who had a personal relationship or love for Ty. I also want to shout out my co-host, Aunt Leek, for allowing me to use our platform to show love and bring awareness. Here is the episode.
Hey, excuse me, my friend. You work for the cleaners, right?
Yeah.
First and foremost, Mrs. Lisa, I want to say thank you for being a guest on the Laundromat Show. And before we get started, with everything going on in the world, COVID-19, social distancing, people losing jobs, all of that, social unrest, I want to ask you first, how are you?
I am good. I can't complain because with everything that's going on, we're pretty much still the same. Everybody's still working. The kids are good. I'm probably the worst first grade homeschool teacher in the world, but it's fine. They'll be fine. So we're good. Everybody's good.
That's good. Yeah, I know a lot of parents got to become teachers during this time. It's crazy.
Crazy.
Crazy. All right, so to give the listeners some background, I believe I first met you and your son Ty. I was around the age of 9 or 10 when you and your family moved across the street from my family in our Middletown, Delaware neighborhood. So from that point on, myself and Ty, we ended up becoming like a part of like this special neighborhood group of friends, and we all ended up being very close for years, like into our adulthood. Shockingly and devastatingly for everyone, your son Ty, he died after a fight at the age of 20 on April 26, 2015. Before we get into the situation about exactly what happened with that, would you be able to share some stories on who your son Ty was as a person? Do you have any personal stories that like show things about his character and what made him so special to so many people?
Sure. So Ty was always, so I had Ty when I was 16. I was in 10th grade. And I grew up in Newark, so I went to Newark High School. So it wasn't, I didn't grow up in the best area, and the school district wasn't the best school district. So after I had him, and then graduated high school and everything, my main focus was getting him into a good school district. So that's why we moved to Middletown in the first place.
Yeah.
But so when you're 16 and you have a baby, it's like you guys grow up together. So Ty, not only was he my oldest child, but he was like my best friend because it was always just us, just me and him. And he was the greatest. Like very rarely did he ever get mad, like very rarely. If he got mad, it was, like it took a lot for him to get angry. But he was always like, he just lived his life to the fullest from the first day of his life. Like even as a little kid, he just always wanted to have fun. He wanted to make sure that all of his friends were having fun. Like he was the kind of person that just wanted to make sure that everybody was having a good time.
Yep.
He was also like, he just lit up the room when he walked in. Like his energy that he brought with him, like as soon as he walked in, it was like, yay, Ty's here, like always. And he was just he was always super loving, like just a good person. He just had a really good heart, and he just never wanted to see anyone like upset or sad or anything like that. Like he just wanted everybody to be happy all the time and just have a great time. And I have so many stories about Ty that it would take up the whole show, but let me think of a couple. Like he just, like when he was little, I think the only time he got mad is like he started wrestling when he was like 5 years old. And when he would lose a wrestling match, he would get mad and throw his headgear, but he would still like shake the other kid's hand and shake the coach's hands. And then afterwards, when I would ask him when I would ask him why he was so upset, he would always say, because I don't want to let my coach down. So he was like disappointed in himself that he was going to disappoint somebody else.
He's always thinking about others.
Yes.
I have a few stories, like I said, being a childhood friend of his, and being his neighbor. One thing I will say, just sharing this with you, Miss Lisa, is I always, and I don't even know how, I wish I would have told him, but I always respected his confidence as a person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he was so, like you said, he lit up a room whenever he came in. He was always like the life of the party. And his confidence always, to me, was just something to be very admired. I will say this: I played basketball, and a lot of times we would play basketball in our neighborhood. And Ty, on a rare occasion, like you said, he was a wrestler, but on a rare occasion, he would play basketball with us. And a lot of times we would play 2-on-2, and I always chose Ty to be on my team because I knew whenever I passed him the ball, he was going to shoot the ball. Like, it did not matter. Ty was not a basketball player at all, but his confidence made him think he was the best player whenever we played. And I always respected that. And I know, like, I carried that with me after his passing. Like, I always was like, if I could play with half of the confidence that Ty played with whenever he rarely played basketball, I would be the man. Also, I did want to share a story of how, like, growing up with him, I went to a different high school when we got to like our high school age. So I was actually very distant, a little bit more so from our friend group in our neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And one thing I really respected was one time my brother went to the same high school as Ty and a few of our other friends. And I remember him being in a situation with another kid, and the kid was kind of messing on him and picking on him. And I was going to a whole nother high school in Delaware. And I always respected the fact that Ty made it a point one day. He texted me or he called me. And he was like, yo, Kyle, I handled this situation for you. Your little brother was going through it with this little kid. And I just made sure he was all right, man. I told the little kid to leave him alone and all of that. And I was just very happy that, like, that was one thing, like, I love so much, is because, like, even though I felt like I was a little bit more distant, I wasn't around as much, he still made sure to look after my little brother. And, that was a big thing about Ty. Like you said, he looked out for others. And that made me really see, like, how much, he was family to me, even though I wasn't around as much as we got older.
Right. Well, that's the one thing about Ty. And I'll say that's how you said about his confidence. One thing that I decided a long time ago, like when he was little, when we had our like first run-in with him being treated a different way because of the color of his skin. And he was little. I want to say he was like 5 years old. And that's what made me realize, like, okay, he is going to go through some things in life that I've never went through. And he's going to deal with some things in life, and people are going to treat him a certain way just because of the color of his skin. And I need to make sure that he is ready to handle these things. And Ty, when he was little, his father was in jail. So it was just us. And like, I had my family and everything, but he didn't have anyone. He didn't have anyone to help him that had been in those types of situations. So, hi.
Hey, what's going on?
So I made it a point that I was always going to make sure that no one was ever going to say anything to him that would ever make him feel like he was less than, or like that he wasn't proud of himself and what he looked like and where he came from. So when he was little, I would always tell him, like how handsome he was and how smart he was, and everything that I said, I would make him repeat back to me, like, who's the smartest and who's the best and who's all of these things to build his confidence. Yeah. Because, the first time that he had that run-in with someone and they said something to him when he was little because of the color of his skin, like, he was so innocent and he had no idea what they were talking about, and it hurt my heart. And I was like, you know what? We are going to make sure that you are super confident in yourself. So if this ever happens again, you're going to let that roll off your back. Like, I know who I am, And no one can ever take that away from me. Like, I am great. I am full of greatness, and that's all I'm ever going to be. So all the time, like when he would walk into a room, I would make sure that my eyes lit up when I saw him, and I made sure that I recognized that he was there. You know, like sometimes you'll walk in somewhere and nobody will say anything.
Yeah.
But when he would walk into the room, I would always be like, hey, Ty, you know, like make a big deal about it.
Yeah.
Because that just made him feel like I am the most important thing, you know, to my mom.
Yeah.
And then, of course, just his personality just flourished and everything from the time he was little.
Yeah.
And then everyone would be like, hey, Ty, hey, Ty.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think just making sure that every day I reminded him from the time he was little how great he was, and that I never wanted him to be like cocky about it. So I always made sure he knew, like, you are the greatest. There is no one greater than you, but you also can't look at other people like you're better than them. So they have greatness in them too, but it's a different greatness. You just worry about your greatness and how great you are, and that's it. And I think that that's what helped him build that confidence, and it just always stayed with him.
Yeah, I think that's a great story, because I didn't even know that. So you kind of really helped push him, you know, as far as gaining his confidence and being confident with whoever he was dealing with. Mm-hmm. And I think something you highlighted that's like so very true, because I experienced it just being his friend. He was so confident in himself, you know, he was very popular. Like, you know, we had our neighborhood group of friends, but he had a million friends outside of us. But, right. You know, one thing I always thought was dope too about Ty was that he was so popular and had so many friends. And then sometimes you get with those type of kids growing up, it's like, oh, I'm popular now. You kind of, for lack of a better term, you shit on the ones that you was cool with when you were younger. And he never did that. Like, he always looked at everybody the same. And I always respected that, because he was cool enough and popular enough to do that to some kids. So yeah, I definitely see that. I'm glad you highlighted that. That's awesome. I think that's a great perspective too, as far as, you know, you being a white woman raising a biracial Black child, just being able to recognize, like, yeah, he's probably going to go through something that I may not, and just, you know, giving him like the tools to try to succeed, you know, despite that. So I think that's great, Ms. Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I definitely wanted to highlight who he was as a person first, to just give anyone listening a chance to understand why he was so special to so many people in your family. As far as what happened on April 26, 2015, would you be able to give an explanation to anyone listening about what exactly happened on that day?
Sure. So, well, I'll give you like the build up to that day.
Yeah.
So Ty had went to a party at this person's house months before that. And he went with one of his other friends. And during that party, I want to say that party was back in like January. And at that party, and it was, I want to say it was like on campus at the University of Delaware, somewhere around there. At that party, some speakers were stolen.
Okay.
Now, Ty didn't steal the speakers. Like, Ty, he was not about anything like that. Like, he would never take anything from anybody. So this person thought Ty stole the speakers, but he didn't. So from that point on, from January until April, this person constantly harassed Ty, would call him in the middle of the night, calling him in all kinds of N-words, stuff like that. He came to our house. He busted our mailbox up with a baseball bat, like, and then called Ty, like, yeah, I did it. What are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. The whole time, like, trying to antagonize Ty and to get Ty some kind of reaction out of Ty. Mm-hmm. But with Ty, like, you know, Ty, he had gotten in trouble in the past for like dumb stuff that, you know, guys do dumb stuff when they're growing up. It's just all a part of growing up. Yeah. But never anything violent, just dumb. Yeah. So, you know, he just, he was on the right track. He had just gotten a really good job. He was making great money, and he just didn't want to mess it up. So he was like, Mom, I'm not worried about this kid. Like, I'm not going to feed into it. You know, they would say stuff back and forth. But Ty was like, I'm not thinking about him. Like, I'm not going to mess up my chance for where I'm going right now. Like, it's whatever. I'm just going to ignore him. So this went on for months and months. And then finally, when he busted up the mailbox, I was like, that's it. Like, I'm going to call the cops. And he was like, Mom, you know, his parents are cops. Like, it's not going to do anything. Like, don't even waste your time. And I was like, all right, fine. it was against my better judgment because I was so pissed about it. Like, you got a lot of nerve. Like, when stuff is between kids, it's usually between the kids, but you got a lot of nerve to come to someone's house that's not their house, it's their parents' house, and, do damage to their property, and you have no fear of what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
But, Ty was like, Mom, just let it go. I let it go. So then on April 25th was a Saturday. So Ty went to work. I talked to him after work. We talked about his day and everything because I worked for the same company that he did. And he was, like in a good mood and everything. And I was like, what are you going to do tonight? And he was like, I think I'm going to go to this party. And I was like, okay. And he was like, and then, can we go to breakfast in the morning? And I was like, of course we can. So I was like, I'll talk to you later or whatever. And that was the last time that I talked to him. So that was the 25th around, I want to say it was like maybe 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, something like that. So Ty went to this party that wasn't too far away from our house. And he was having a good time at the party. He was a big fan of beer pong. So he was playing beer pong.
Yep.
And he was great at it. You couldn't tell him that he couldn't rap. So I'm sure he was downstairs rapping.
Yep.
And, he was a ladies' man. So he was all about whatever ladies were there. He was going to be with the ladies. So he was having a good time in the basement. And then this person heard that he was at this party. So this person showed up with the sole intention to antagonize Ty, to get him to fight him. Mm-hmm. And actually an hour before Ty was killed, this person tweeted the funny thing about Middletown N-word is that they say, I'll see you when I see you, but then when you see them, they don't want to do anything. Mm-hmm. So right there, he said, I'm here to fight him. He don't want to do anything. But so he kept, antagonizing him, backed him into a corner. Finally, Ty was like, all right, fine. You want to fight me? I'll fight you. And then just leave me alone. Like, I don't want nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
So they went outside. They got into the fight. And during the course of the fight, Ty was knocked unconscious. And then once he was unconscious, he was kicked in the head. And he died. So once he was unconscious and then the kick came, his breathing became labored. And his friends or the people at the party noticed that. So someone was like, we need to call 911. He's not breathing. So he was still breathing a little bit, but it was just labored. So as soon as that person heard that, that person left the party. He was like, I'm out of here. So because the party, everybody was, not everyone, but the majority of the party was underage. So I guess they were nervous about dialing 911 because they had been drinking and stuff. And I'm sure, like doing drugs, whatever. So they waited 8 minutes to dial 911. And 8 minutes doesn't seem like a long time, but if you and I sat here in silence for 8 minutes, it's a long time. It's a long time when someone is struggling to breathe and they're unconscious. It's a long time. So they called 911, they walked them through the whole CPR thing. The ambulance came and they took Ty to Christiana. And then once I got to Christiana, they were still working on him. And then probably about, I don't know, like maybe after 5 minutes after I got there and, they brought me into the ER in the room with him, they ended up calling his time of death. And then that was it.
Wow. Yeah. And that was an unbelievable and I, my memories of the situation, I was actually playing ball out in Kansas. I was going to school out there. Mm-hmm. And for sure, like you said, I remember, texting, we had our group chat, me and a few of my other friends that we were all close with. And I remember him not really, he wasn't sweating the situation at all. Like he was like, I really I remember the text messages, seeing them like, I really am not, worried about this guy. You know what I mean? He wants to fight me and he keeps talking trash. So after that, because to me, I guess it would seem, or to anyone who listens to this story, it would seem like it was a fight that took place. And would you say Ty was in good health before the fight?
Absolutely.
So a fight takes place and now, he's no longer here. What exactly happened? What reason did law enforcement or, no arrest was made, correct?
Correct.
No arrest was made and no charges were filed?
Correct.
What reason did they give for that? And what did they conclude was the reason for Ty passing?
Okay. So after, the ambulance took him to the hospital, they worked on him. They called his time of death. So I'm sitting in the room with Ty, holding his hand. And forensics comes in to take photos. So they're like, you have to leave the room, whatever. I'm like, I'm not leaving the room. So then the hospital staff is like, forensics has to come in and take photos because of the incident. We're going to clean Ty up and then we'll put him in a room and then you and your family can have some alone time with Ty. And I'm like, okay. So I got up and left. By that time, my sisters and my brother and my parents had made it to the hospital, and Jordan's parents were at the hospital. So we're all sitting in this room waiting for them to get done what they're doing, to clean Ty up, and then to let us go into this room to say our final goodbye to him. Waiting. So finally I go back out and I'm like, hi, where is my son? And they're like, oh, the coroner picked up your son. And I'm like, what? You said you were going to give us time to say goodbye to him. No. So the medical examiner at the coroner's office picked him up. I had already taken him away. So I'm like, okay. So they're like, Newcastle County Police are on their way. They're going to pick you up and bring you back to the station for some questions. So that happens. As soon as I get into the room with the head detective, she says, I think she might have offered her condolences. And then she said, does your son have any previous health issues? So I'm still in shock. When I was driving to the hospital, when I got the call, Ty's been in a fight, he's unconscious, they're going to take him to the hospital. And when I left my house, all I was thinking is, he's in so much trouble. I'm going to yell at him when I get to the hospital, maybe he has a concussion, something like that. He's going to be fine. I'm going to yell at him. He's in trouble. He knows better. So once I got there, and then everything happened so fast, bam, bam, bam. You're in so much shock. You don't even know what's going on. You're like, this is not real life. This cannot be happening. So I sit in the room. She asked me if he has any prior health issues. I said he had an old shoulder injury from wrestling. And he had a heart murmur when he was a baby. And she was like, okay. I don't even remember what else she said at that point. But then, I left. Ty's friends that were at the party were out there. They were asking how he is. How's he okay? Is he okay? They didn't even know. So I had to tell all of them. And then the police ended up dropping me off at home. But since I told her that he had a heart murmur when he was a baby, it just seemed like they wanted to run with that. Now, the majority of babies are born with a heart murmur, but by the time you're 2 years old, you usually grow out of that heart murmur, which was the case for Ty. Ty wrestled from the time he was 5 all through high school. If he had an issue with his heart, wrestling is very strenuous.
Yes.
So something would have happened, within that time frame. So, okay, coroner has his body. They do the autopsy and everything. I'm talking to the police. By this time I find out who it was that was fighting him, that it was videotaped, all this kind of stuff, that he left the party. So I'm like, why hasn't he been arrested? It's on video. He tweeted, that Ty didn't want to fight an hour before Ty was dead, and no arrest has been made. How is this possible? So they say, well, the way it works when someone dies is the police can't make the arrest. The attorney general has to make the arrest, or it has to give the go-ahead for the arrest. So the attorney general said that he didn't think that it warranted an arrest because they agreed to fight. Delaware has this mutual combatant law. It's really just a defense law. It was on private property. So, and also the news that we heard from the medical examiner said Ty didn't have any injuries to him. Now, the autopsy wasn't even complete.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that the medical examiner said there were no injuries.
Okay.
So, okay. It's not even okay to say that before the autopsy is complete, but okay. So, so then they were looking at it like just the death investigation because he was at a party. So they're like, oh, he was probably doing drugs. He had this heart murmur issue. That's probably what it was. So fast forward, everything hinged on his autopsy and his toxicology. So his toxicology comes back. He is not legally drunk. He does have some weed in his system. And he did take a Molly at the party, a 0.25 of a Molly, as did 25 other kids at the party.
Mm-hmm.
But in his toxicology, his levels for that Molly didn't even register a number high enough to technically show that it was in his system, is what I was told by the Department of Justice.
Wow.
But it was there.
Mm-hmm.
So then what the medical examiner ended up saying is that he died from the stress of the fight on his heart, and they ruled it accidental. So then you sit with the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, and they say, given all the facts, so Ty agreed to fight, and he didn't die from any injuries, but rather stress on his heart. And then he had this Molly in his system, and we don't really know what Molly does because it's a newer drug. So we can't say beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Molly didn't have something that it didn't contribute. But we also can't say that it did. We can't say either way. So they're like, we talked to a couple of our other, lawyers and everything in our office, and we don't feel confident that we would get a conviction. So our charging decision is we're not going to charge. That's not how the law works. It's not up to your, other people that you work with, your colleagues. The way it works is you're supposed to, if a crime's been committed, and you need to decide whether or not charges should be brought, okay, well then you get a grand jury. A secret jury, you present just the facts of the case, and then the grand jury either decides to give a true bill and say charges should be brought or not.
Yeah.
That never happened in Ty's case. So they never filed any charges. And, they just wanted us to be okay with that, but we weren't just going to be okay with that.
Obviously not. You obviously can't be okay with that. And obviously you just stated you didn't agree with this determination at all. Did you think there were other factors that may have caused this determination for them not to go forward and file charges?
Absolutely. So the person that did this, both of his parents were in police enforcement. And, again, since I was only 16 when I had him, this other person's parents are 20 years older than me. So they had been in their roles and their positions for a long time. So that makes deep ties within that whole field that they're in. And I 100% feel that if his parents weren't who they are, that it would have went in a different direction. I also feel that because Ty is Black, if he wasn't, it would have went in a different direction. Or if the kid that killed him was Black, it would have went in a different direction. So one of the things for me that was such an issue is that the autopsy said that there were no bruises on Ty. There was no marks on him from the fight at all. Mm-hmm. And when we had his viewing, I actually had to take photos of him in his casket because he was covered in bruises. They do the makeup and everything, but I know what my baby looks like, and I know every mark and line in his face, and I knew what was there. So I did that. And then I reached out to the medical examiner. And every person that I reached out to in law enforcement, the Department of Justice and medical examiner, I was met with some sort. It was not like, okay, Ty's the victim and we're so sorry for your loss and what can we do for you? It was like immediately they were blaming Ty like he caused his own death. Like it was his fault that he was dead. Everything that I said or questions that I asked were immediately met with like just defense and anger. And it blew my mind because like as a white person, when you think about racism, you don't really deal with it. So a lot of white people that like don't understand racism, it's because they've never dealt with anything like that in their life.
Yeah.
And you just assume like if someone kills someone, the fight is on video. You posted a tweet, you know, an hour before this person's dead saying you want to fight them and they don't want to fight you. Mm-hmm. Leave the scene before the police get there. Like, it just makes sense that, oh, you're going to jail. You're getting locked up. You're going to jail. It is what it is. So when it doesn't happen that way, you're like, what is going on? You're like, this is like something that happens on TV. This isn't real life.
Yeah.
So I continuously reached out to the medical examiner, could never get him. So one day I decided, you know what, I'm just going up there. So I went to the medical examiner's office. I sat in that office for hours before he would come out and speak to me. And then finally he came out to speak to me. We went into a room. He opened Ty's autopsy file and we went through those pictures. Mm-hmm. Now, as a parent, having your child die is the hardest thing, the worst thing. Like, it's the worst. Having your child die and having the people that are there to protect your rights and, you know, that are supposed to uphold the law, act like, sorry that he's dead. There's nothing we can do, whatever. That makes it 10 times harder. Then to physically go into a medical examiner's office and have to look at photos of your child cut open because you have to do all of these things to get the justice for him that he deserves. That's a million, like, those are photos, those are pictures that will never leave my mind. I can never unsee that, but I had to see it to prove a point.
Yeah.
So I went through each photo. I pointed out every bruise, but still it wasn't enough. And every time that I pointed out a bruise to him, he was like, oh, well, it looked to me like that was there before the incident. Well,
wow.
No, it wasn't. But so, you know, from there, I just decided we have to get our own independent autopsy because everything seemed fishy to me, even down to the point that on Ty's autopsy report, the beginning of it says his body was warm to the touch. Like, you took him out of that hospital so fast before we even had time to say goodbye to him, that by the time you got him into that room to cut him open, his body was still warm. Like, it's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. You know, everything you just said, Miss Lisa, is just crazy. There's so many aspects of this story that's just unbelievable and just unreal to anyone. You explained how the person that Ty was fighting was the one actually egging him on to fight, and Ty really wasn't really actually wanting to actually fight him. And that when he was knocked down, you said he was kicked, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And basically, they said they ruled his death accidental. Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah.
That's just unreal. You and about 300 or so more people, you led a peaceful march throughout Middletown, Delaware on May 9th, 2015. You were, demanding that justice be had for your son, Ty. You touched on it a little bit about him being a black male and how this may not have happened, how, that person may have been arrested and charged had he been black or had he not had parents in law enforcement. And so you guys led a peaceful march in Middletown in 2015. Do you see a correlation with everything you guys did back then to what is happening in the world now? And do you feel Ty's situation is similar to the situations of people like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Trayvon Martin?
I do. So I think one of the things that is so sad when a black person is murdered, and this does not happen to white people. It might happen to other, brown people, other minorities, but it does not happen when a white person is murdered. So just like with Ty, when he was killed, they dug up his mugshot from when he had been in trouble before. They put his mugshot in the paper. They, dug up everything that he had ever done wrong. He's a victim. He's the person that was killed. Like, why are you worried about what he did in his past? Because they try to paint him in a certain light. They try to make him look like someone he's not to people that don't even know him, so that people, they just form this opinion on him. And I feel like with everyone else that you name that was killed, it's the same thing. Like George Floyd, about his criminal past for what? It should have never been brought up. He was minding his business. Okay, someone called the cops on him about something, but does that mean that he should have been murdered? No, like, he wasn't doing anything violent to anyone else. So why does his prior criminal history even come up? And I think that happens a lot. Like, even with Ty, he didn't drive to the party that night, but the police went and found where his car was parked at and towed his car so that it could be searched. And the funny thing about that is that they thought that Ty's car belonged to him. So they were just going to tow it and search it and not have to say anything to anyone. But the car belonged to me. So once they towed it and opened it up and saw that the title said Lisa Sawyer, they had to call me and ask me for my permission to search it, which I gave them. And then they had to then call me and tell me, sorry, ma'am, we didn't find anything. Why were you looking at his car in the first place? Like, you're trying to build this case against him when he's the victim. And I feel like that always happens to people of color. I also feel like we peacefully protested back in 2015 and nothing came of it. And actually, the night that we were driving to Ty's viewing, Chris Coons, I believe he's a senator, called my lawyer and said, don't let her turn this into Baltimore. So everything had just happened in Baltimore because Freddie Gray was murdered by the police. And, there was all kinds of protests and things like that. And people like to call them riots. I would prefer to call it an uprising, because you can only peacefully protest for so long. It's not like they're doing something that isn't a big deal, so you're going to peacefully protest about it. You can only peacefully protest over and over and over and over again and not see any change before you're so tired and so angry that those protests turn into something else. And I think calling those protests a riot is just another thing to make it look like something bad. It's not a riot. It's an uprising because you're not listening.
Yes.
So if you don't want to listen when everyone is peaceful, you're going to listen when some things change. And I think, obviously in the past, when Martin Luther King peacefully protested for years and nothing changed until after he was murdered, it's just, you cannot continue to keep doing the same things to the same group of people over and over again and not expect them to eventually say enough is enough and we're not going to deal with it anymore. And I think everything that happened with George Floyd, that's exactly what it came to. You can't just do that and think nothing is going to happen. You have zero fear of consequences because you're a police officer.
Yep.
And then people are so angry about, statues and things like that. These are people's lives you're talking about. No one gives a shit about that statue.
Yep.
We're talking about people losing their lives.
Yep.
And I think what they don't realize, when people are like, oh, you're rioting, you're looting, you're damaging your own communities, you're a criminal. Okay. Well, what if it was your son? How angry would you be? What if it was your brother, your sister, your mother, your father? Would you be angry enough to set some shit on fire? Because that's what happens.
Yep.
And, I think with George Floyd, it was the perfect storm. Everyone was home because of COVID. So you have a lot of time on your hands to pay attention.
Yep.
So I think now that everyone was home and everyone was paying attention, and everyone, the majority started coming together to say this isn't right and we can't continue to let this happen. And I think this is what will cause a change. This is the first time in history that every state led protests for Black lives. So I think,
something's happening. The change is definitely happening. We're starting to make noise. You touched on it as far as people, using their voice because they're upset, and you guys peacefully protested. So what does it mean to you? Because back then, it was protests, and there was a lot of people speaking online. I remember, and on social media, a lot of times people may see the hashtag Justice for Ty, Long Live Ty. What does it mean for you and your family for Ty to have had such a large impact on his community and on social media, to the point where, like, I've seen you post on your social media, like a celebrity like Russell Simmons, he commented on the situation. What does it mean to you and your family that, he made that big of an impact and people want to see something change for him?
I think it's definitely heartwarming to see so many people that did know Ty and didn't know Ty, to speak out for the injustice with his death. And it does mean a lot. And, we peacefully protested then. We peacefully protested the next year. Like, we did more than one protest, but we didn't see anything change from that. So I just hope that with everything that's going on now, I just hope that all the ties in the world, that this doesn't happen to anyone else, and that something will change where this doesn't happen again.
It's unfortunate that you did peacefully protest and you said nothing really changed. And I remember even going to a Middletown protest for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, everything that's happening now, and I saw multiple, and I'm sure you posted about it, I saw multiple Justice for Ty signs. So people definitely are seeing the similarities in the relation between those two situations, and they want it to change. So I guess to starting to wrap up, obviously, like, when situations like these occur and no justice is had, sometimes I feel like for the families involved in these situations, their pain, your pain, the pain of friends of Ty, or just anyone in the situation, sometimes it becomes out of sight, out of mind to the public. So, Miss Lisa, I have a two-part question. First, do you want things to change now as far as there being an arrest, charges filed, and a conviction? And if you do, what would it mean for you for those things to happen now for you and your family? What would that mean for you and your family?
I think, no charge or conviction or anything like that will obviously ever bring Ty back or take that pain away. For me, for anyone in my family, for his siblings, it'll never take that pain away. But what it would do is it would just make it would take a little bit of the sting off, because right now it just seems like he didn't matter. Like, he just mattered to us. But when it comes to the people that are supposed to protect your rights and do everything, to make sure that things like this don't happen, to them, he didn't matter. Like, you just let him be killed and you're just like, wipe your hands clean. Like, sorry, just another day at the office. There's nothing we can do about it. So I think that if there was a conviction and, this person was arrested and convicted, that's the big thing. Like, even with these cops with George Floyd, okay, they're arrested, but will they be convicted? Because you can arrest someone all day long, but until you actually convict them so that there is a strong consequence to what they've done, it doesn't matter, So yeah, if there was a conviction, then I just feel like it would just take some of this thing out of it. Like, yes, Ty mattered. He mattered to everyone, and it's not okay for someone to just take someone else's life.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. With the recent level of attention being placed nowadays on cases like these and situations like these, and recent awareness, is there anything anybody that may listen to this episode they can do to help out possibly? Or is there anything that any of the listeners can do to show love in his memory?
I would say anyone that's listening that wants to help make a change, if they could just reach out to the Delaware Attorney General and just express their concerns that they feel like charges should be made, they could do that. they could also reach out to Newcastle County Police Headquarters and do the same thing. Just say, that they want justice for Ty Sawyer and they want to see it happen. As far as, like a new petition or anything like that, we don't have anything like that online yet. But also, anytime in the future, if we're going to protest outside of the Department of Justice or the Newcastle County Police Headquarters, just anyone that, wanted to come out and show their support, that would be great as well. And then anyone that sees anything online about Ty, if they could just, post about him and spread the word just to get awareness out there for what's happened to him, that would be great.
Sure, that's awesome. Just share what's going on. I definitely agree with that. Also, I did he have a scholarship at all?
Yes. So there is a Ty Sawyer Scholarship Fund. So I work for Power Home Remodeling. Ty worked for Power Home Remodeling. And the owners of Power Home Remodeling put together a Ty Sawyer Scholarship Fund in his memory. So there is a GoFundMe for that online. So if anyone wanted to donate to that, they could do that as well.
Awesome. I think that would be a great way to show love in his memory as well. I believe that's GoFundMe.com/Sawyer hyphen scholarship. So that would be a dope way as well to support. I'm so happy that you were able to be a guest and to speak on Ty and speak on your family. You guys are like family to me. You guys living across the street from me for years and years, and Ty was like a brother to me growing up. So I really appreciate you, Miss Lisa, coming on and just sharing your experience and speaking on your son. Is there anything else you would like to share about Ty or speak on?
No, I appreciate you, Kyle, and that he loved you like a brother. So I think my greatest fear after you lose your child, the only fear that you have left is that people will forget about them. So I just appreciate you guys doing everything to keep his name out there. I really do.
I appreciate that, man. He was like a brother to me, and he'll never be forgotten. He made such a big impact, as you know, on so many people. And to leave out on a positive note, I did want to mention this earlier when speaking about him. I had a lot of different classes with Ty, like in elementary school and middle school. And like how you were talking about how he was the ladies' man and all that. One thing I did forget to mention was I had a class with Ty one time. And I remember knowing back then, he was such a cool dude, popular dude. And Ty had a great combination of, obviously the girls liked how he looked, right? They loved how he looked. They loved his eyes and all that. So I was like, all right, I already can't compete with that. But then he was funny too. So I'm like, yo, how are you going to be funny and the girls think you look good? And I used to always be in class like, yo, man, I'm tall, but I already know I can't even get with him when it comes to girls, man. He got everything going for him. So he was always cool in that way. And he definitely will be missed. I miss him a lot. And, I just want to say, again, thank you for being on and just sharing your experience, Ms. Lisa. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone who's tuned into this episode. I thought what better way to end this episode than to have a positive message from Ty himself. Thank you.
Man, I tell you what, I smiled through everything, man. All the struggles that I'm going through right now, I'm still smiling. Smile. You ain't ruining that.